Breonna Taylor, remember Breonna Taylor? Remember this young woman? Okay, she was 26 years old when she was shot and killed by the police out of Louisville, Kentucky. This happened on March 13th, 2020. You may remember the story. We covered this one a long time ago, right when it happened, and this has been something we've been following for a long time. Now, she was in her apartment, in home, asleep, when the police were approaching her apartment. They were going to do a drug investigation or a drug raid. Her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, saw the police coming in, thought it was an intruder. He picks up his firearm. He fires towards the cops. The cops just fire sort of haphazardly back towards his direction. He's not hit at all, but Breonna Taylor is hit, and she's actually shot and killed. And we went through this case in great detail. You can look up one of the prior videos and sort of see what the cops were looking for and how they shot and how this whole scene went down. But it was horrendous because there was a lot of malfeasance. There was a lot of mistakes that were made. You can go back to it. I don't remember the details specifically, but I think they were at the wrong house. And they had the other guy who they were really looking for in custody in a different police precinct. And so all sorts of problems. And the big question was, what's going to happen with this case? This all took place before George Floyd, before most of the country was really sort of invested and involved in this criminal justice reform movement. It was before, BLM was around, before the peaceful protesters, before the non-peaceful protesters. So this case kind of, at the beginning, fell off everybody's radar, but now it has sort of picked up a lot of steam, and people were really concerned, and they're wondering, are these cops going to get charged with crimes? And that was the reason we were following this case along. But then something happened this week, which sort of makes me think that's probably not going to end up happening. So we have Breonna Taylor. Her family is to receive a $12 million settlement from the City of Louisville. This comes from the New York Times, written by Rukmini Kalimaki, and she says that in the aftermath of the botched police raid in which Miss Taylor was killed, the city agreed to institute changes to prevent future deaths by officers. So let's go through this story a little bit. You can see here that after months of protest, the settlement was reached. $12 million. $12 million will go over to Breonna Taylor's family. And they're also going to institute some changes aimed at preventing future deaths by officers. So we'll dive into that a little bit. The agreement, however, did not require the city to acknowledge any wrongdoing. It was sizable. Her family received more than double the amount that relatives of Eric Garner, which was another guy who was killed by the New York police in 2014. And another segment of the article that I just clipped, this is not all, these paragraphs are all clipped sort of however I wanted to do it. It says the policing changes would require more oversight by top commanders. So these are the changes. So Breonna Taylor is going to get $12 million, or her family is going to get $12 million, which is, a significant amount of money, but I'm sure the family would trade that money in a heartbeat to have their daughter back. Regardless, it's a nice chunk of money. A lot of the times when they're going through these settlement negotiations, they're going to be asking questions like, how old was this person? What kind of job did they have? What was their future earning capacity? What is the political climate? And obviously this case is a little bit different. Most people who are entering into settlements with the law enforcement officials, they are not part of national news. Most of these settlements are done really hush-hush, kind of quiet, by the wayside. But Breonna Taylor's case had a lot of people who were very, very interested in this. And, this was actually leading to a lot of civil unrest and a lot of concerns, political concerns for the upper echelons of the police and the city council and everybody in the government. They all wanted to make this go away, which in my opinion is probably why the settlement is so high. And $12 million is not insignificant. And so they took that deal. And I think that this is probably going to be the end of this case. I don't think that they're actually going to get charged. Here's why I say that. So in addition to the $12 million, they were also going to institute some safeguards. Number one, they're going to require more oversight by top commanders. And I don't even know what that means. There was just a news article today that I'm not going to cover on the show today, but it's from the City of Phoenix. The City of Phoenix police chief made some statements to a news reporter here at ABC 15, Dave Biscobing, and she basically said, I don't even know how the Brady system works. I don't even know how any of the mechanics of this work. I don't know how these records are maintained. I don't know how they're stored. I don't know how they're disclosed. No idea. So when they use this type of language, when law enforcement or any government entity just says, well, we need more oversight. Think about all the places you hear this. How many times do we hear about more oversight? We need it in the financial industry. We need it in the healthcare industry. We need it in the insurance industry. It's just a generic buzzword. I don't know what it means. Can somebody tell me what that means? More oversight by top commanders. I have no idea. Then the next thing they're going to do is they're going to make mandatory safeguards that were common practice. They're going to make mandatory the safeguards that were already in common practice. So that's going to be, basically saying, well, this was already good practice. We were doing that anyways, but now we're just going to make it mandatory. So the cops should have been doing it. They weren't doing it. So now we're just going to say that they should do it again. Okay, so they're going to make it mandatory. I don't know what safeguards they're talking about specifically. Maybe they'll detail that for us. And, this is not the author of this article. It's not her fault. She probably, wasn't specifically asking these questions, and there's probably not any good answers to it anyways. But what were those safeguards that they should have been following, but that weren't mandatory? If those same safeguards would have been mandatory, would Breonna Taylor still be alive? Who knows? Who knows? That's anybody's guess. And then finally, the last thing they're going to put in place is an early warning system to flag officers who have been accused of excessive force. So, good stuff. I think if all that goes through, certainly more oversight. If it's productive oversight, that would be good. If it's just, what I think a lot of the oversight looks like right now, it's just sort of looking at, oh, that looks good to me. That sounds about right. I think we'll let that one slip through. We need more than that. We need some concrete rules. We need more detail on what that means, because as far as I'm concerned, any politician or any city council member or any of these people who just beat the more oversight drum, I don't know what that means. And I don't think they do either, quite frankly. So we'll see what happens with this case. It is important to note. Let's take a quick look. Let's finish the article. It says, since the young black woman's death, the top demand of the protesters who gather nightly in downtown square have been that criminal charges be brought against the 3 white officers who shot Ms. Taylor. So officers were fired upon first. So legal experts say that their actions may be protected under Kentucky's statute. And for that reason, they're saying it is unlikely that a criminal inquiry being conducted by the state's attorney general will result in charges against at least 2 of the officers who were standing directly in front of Kenneth Walker. Third officer has been fired for shooting recklessly that night, but the results of the attorney general's investigation are expected to be released soon. If no charges are brought, or if the charges are minor, the settlement announced this week may be the closest Miss Taylor's family comes to justice. And I think that's probably going to be the case. I think there's probably, this will never make the settlement agreement. This will never make the news, or nobody will disclose this. But it sounds like kind of a quid pro quo thing going on here. Maybe the government said, yes, we'll give you a higher settlement, and we'll agree to these reforms so long as you forego or you stop sort of advocating that additional charges be brought. So in other words, let's put this whole thing to bed. We're going to give you $12 million. We're going to agree to these sort of minor talking point token reforms for our justice system. And in exchange for that, we're going to ask you to just leave this thing alone. So no longer be the spearhead of this, no longer be, on TV and raising money and all of that stuff. They're going to forego, I would guess, as part of the settlement agreement, just speculating, they're going to forego any other civil claims against the government. And the attorney general or whoever's doing the investigation there out of Louisville, it'll be up to them to decide whether or not to bring charges. But based on the fact that they're paying $12 million, I think that's going to be sort of like that quid pro quo. They're going to say, here's $12 million. We're not going to bring charges, and we're just going to wrap this whole case up. We'll see what happens. I would not hold my breath. If you were looking for those individuals to be charged with a crime for that, wouldn't hold my breath. And that is Breonna Taylor's update. Maybe the last update. If anything pops up, we'll let you know. But that may be it. The settlement may close that case from this chapter.